Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the June 10th meeting of the Comox Valley Sewage Commission. And I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting today on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. I'd like to acknowledge that at the table we have Director Hardy from Area B, who has voice but not vote. And I'd also like to welcome Kevin Stevens, who has taken over as the representative of CFB Comox. And Kevin's a civilian in a management role there, and it's good to have you at the table. You've been here before, and nice to have you back. So we'll start our meeting with the resolution status report dated June 25th. The motion for receipt, please. Moved by Grant, second by McCollum. Questions or comments? All right, anyone opposed to receipt? That's carried, thank you. We have the Sewage Management Advisory minutes dated May 29th. The motion for receipt, please. Moved by Grant, seconded by Cole Hamilton. Questions or comments? Anyone opposed? That is carried. The outfall condition assessment results and path forward, a report dated June 4th. The motion for receipt, please. Moved by Grant, seconded by McCollum. Over to staff.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. Zoe Berkey, our Senior Engineering Analyst, will be introducing the staff report, and we'll be able to support any discussion to follow. Zoe, over to you.
Thank you, James. Through the Chair. This report is to summarize the outfall condition assessment and the proposed path forward for the outfall. So as discussed previously, a key requirement from the Ministry in the Stage 3 Liquid Waste Management Plan is to determine the timing and the estimated cost for the outfall replacement. Driving the timing of the replacement of the outfall for us is capacity at this time, and there's some potential to extend its lifetime by completing a modest pressure increase within the pipe. So the outfall, sorry, one second, there we go. The outfall can be divided into three different sections. So there's the onshore section, which is shown in red on the screen, the offshore section, which is shown in blue, and then the diffuser section where the effluent is dispersed into the Strait of Georgia. So the offshore and diffuser sections were inspected by remote operated vehicle in 2023 and were in generally good shape, although some leakage was noted around the diffuser Y, so where the offshore section of the pipe kind of fuses into that diffuser section. When reviewed previously, due to the volume and the location of the leakage, it was determined that there was no repairs required, but that we'll review this again as part of kind of this planned path forward. So the real big key, or the part that we were looking to better understand before recommending this modest pressure increase, was the onshore section of the pipe. So both the onshore and offshore sections of pipe are made of different material, the offshore being steel and the onshore section being pre-stressed concrete cylinder pipe. To do the condition assessment required inserting an electromagnetic inspection tool within the pipe. So we were successful in completing this in the winter this year, not without a few challenges. So the section in blue is the area or the portion of the onshore section of the pipe that we were able to inspect. And it's not quite the entirety of the onshore section. So the onshore section is about 3 kilometers and we got about 75% of it. The reason for not being able to get that remaining 25% was the location of the access hatch. So the access hatch is that little thing shown or circled in red on the foreshore. And this is an existing structure that's below ground. We installed a culvert on top of it that can be shown in the far right photo with the guy in yellow, just for this inspection. So to be able to stop that big fancy tool, which is shown as the green tool in kind of that middle photo, we had to install a stopping grate within that access hatch to catch the tool for the inspection. So we were able to successfully complete that inspection in the winter, and we got some good and positive results. So there's 322 sticks of pipe that were inspected using that electromagnetic inspection tool. And of those 322 pipes, 2 were found or recorded to have the acoustic signature of broken pre-stressing wires, but less than 5 broken pre-stressing wires. And then there was another 7 pipes that had just anomalies, just kind of different acoustic signatures or electromagnetic signatures that weren't related to broken wire pipes, but or broken wires within the pipe, but just kind of had a different sound. So using finite element analysis and predictive modeling, our consultant determined that the onshore section of pipe has not exceeded its yield limit and can accommodate the pressure increase to achieve the additional capacity required to extend the useful life of the outfall. And that's kind of shown in that graph on the right with the different lines and curves. So our current pipe operates at around 20 PSI when we're pumping, and we're kind of thinking another 15 PSI would buy us those 10 years. So pretty modest pressure increase to buy us some additional time in those peak wet weather flow events when they coincide with high tides. For the rest of the year, to be clear, the pipe flows by gravity. So based on these results, we're recommending proceeding with the infrastructure upgrades necessary for that approximately 10-year extension of capacity. And that would be looking at, some changing of the pumps within the effluent storage basin circled in red, and then some modifications to the effluent chamber, which is that little red square on the bottom right of the screen. Should the Sewage Commission approve the recommendation within the report today, we'll bring forward a budget amendment at a future meeting for the detailed design costs for those upgrades to be completed by Carollo as part of the phase 4 upgrades at the plant. That's it from me. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks very much, Zoe. Questions or comments from commission members? And Director McCollum.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, you mentioned that the pipe would only be pressurized during times when it's needed to be, which correlates with storm weather. Is that to say that this increase in capacity is being driven from that we're having increasing amounts of stormwater then in the system, or is it that that's about stable and then we have additional capacity needs from, population growth and usage? Just wondering how that plays into our needs here.
Yeah, for the times when we pump is really kind of a perfect storm event a little bit. So we see those peak wet weather flows, which, they haven't really increased over the last couple of years, but they're not really decreasing either, coinciding with those high tides that just are becoming, they always seem to December, February, January. And so we kind of get this time where we don't have enough head at the plant to get over that high tide with gravity. And so we kind of start storing our flows and we have to wait for it to subside. Chris, I don't know if you want to add anything there in terms of kind of those peak flows.
I think that was a good summary, Zoe. I think just to summarize, it's a combination of conservatism, I guess, with the projected impacts of climate change locally, increases in sea level, in combination with that increase in base flows, which we do expect to see over the coming years from the growing community largely. So I don't think to answer your question, we don't expect the INI to grow as a fraction of the total wastewater, but it is growing, as the communities add more development, largely through greenfield. Infill, it shouldn't impact the level of INI, but certainly new collection systems and greenfield developments just add to that collection area. But as far as a fraction of the total, no, we don't see that growing.
Okay, yeah, that's good to understand. Thanks for the answer.
Perhaps I'll just ask, it is mentioned in the report, but probably helpful to state publicly the plan for community engagement and also engaging with our First Nation on this.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, this will be kind of embedded within the Stage 3 Liquid Waste Management Plan, which will include some public consultation on that full report. We also plan to continue to engage with Comox First Nation Chief and Council. We did kind of provide them an update in May on this topic as well.
Okay, thanks very much. I don't see any further questions or comments, so thanks very much to staff for that report. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? Okay, that is carried, and we do have a recommendation that the infrastructure upgrades necessary to pressurize the outfall for approximately a 10-year extension of capacity be included as part of the Comox Valley Water Pollution Control Center Phase 4 upgrades. Moved by Grant, seconded by, is that McCollum? Thank you. No further discussion. Anyone opposed? That motion is carried. Thanks very much, and we'll move on to Comox Valley Sewage Service Development Cost Charge Update. And we have a June 5th report. Motion for receipt, please. Moved by Grant, seconded by Cole Hamilton, and over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to introduce Chris LaRose. He'll be presenting the staff report and available for discussion. Chris is our Senior Manager of Water Wastewater Services.
Thank you, James, and through the chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So we've developed a bit of a presentation here to help walk us through the staff report on your agenda. So the report is reporting out on the development cost charge study process that we've now completed. A lot of pieces have fed into this process. So that piece of study work, but a lot of planning to look out to that within that 20-year planning horizon to update our project list, which is the kind of the core of the development cost charge study. So what projects do we have on the horizon? What is their estimated eligible fraction? Like how much of each project is eligible for recouping development cost charges? And then more recently, we've worked closely with our counterparts at Courtney and Comox to synchronize the definitions, because along with updating the rates, we take the opportunity usually to update or modernize the language within the development cost charge bylaw. What we have in front of us today is the result of this work. So first, just a reminder of the definition. So there's two pieces. Development cost charges are charged for parcels or additional units being developed within the existing service area. They're charged upon subdivision or building permit, depending on the situation. And then the capital improvement cost charges are, in our case, have typically been equal to the development cost charge in terms of value, but they're charged for parcels that are added into the service area. And so they're charged upon, typically charged upon service area expansion. So we plan to bring forward a staff report and draft bylaw to a subsequent meeting. So we've chose to focus on the development cost charges today. So one of the, so I mentioned the project list as being a key input to the planning process. The other key piece is updated development and population projections. So those two pieces together, the total value of the works expected and then the total number of units come together to develop the rate that is charged. So we updated the dwelling units and areas off of recent study work completed by the Courtney and Comox, who have been navigating the process roughly in parallel. Sorry. We've updated the project list to remove completed projects. And I'll show you on the next slide the updated project list. We've also, as a key input to this work, we are well along our way to completion of the site master plan at the Comox Valley Water Pollution Control Center, which is being delivered as part of the liquid waste management planning process. And that has given us a very solid idea of what work is required within the planning horizon. So this table summarizes the projects that are on the updated project list. So obviously the project name on the left, the second column is the total estimated cost for each project. And then the third column is the estimated benefit to existing users, as opposed to driven by growth. So for example, the sewer conveyance project is on the project list. And we've estimated that project is a 42% benefit to existing users and the remainder being driven by growth, and so on down the list. You can see a number of those projects are only driven by growth because they aren't otherwise required to service the existing population. And then combining those two numbers gives us the final column, which is the portion of those projects that are attributable to growth. So you can see the bottom line, approximately $240 million expected over that 20-year horizon for the service, of which 117 is recoverable from, or eligible for recoverable for attributable to growth. So as I mentioned, in addition to the updating the rates, we've also worked with our municipal counterparts to update the definitions. And so the key definitions are relevant to or associated with land use. So we now categorize residential development into three different types. So low density, medium density, and high density. And then we've adjusted, what is provided for within each of those categories. So, for example, low density residential now is proposed to include a single detached dwelling, which could include a secondary suite downstairs and a carriage house in the backyard, included within that single low density rate. So in other words, if you develop a single family lot within the municipal bounds, then you would pay a low density residential rate, and then those homeowners could either build right off the bat 3 units on that property or do so over time without incurring additional DCC rates. Medium density is defined as a 2-unit dwelling or a multi-residential dwelling, such as a duplex dwelling, townhomes, triplex, fourplex, and mobile home parks. And so those are they have different rights and thereby attract a lower rate, as you'll see on the subsequent slide. And then high density is a building which contains multiple dwelling units accessible via a common corridor, so like a mid-rise apartment building. So this table summarizes the current and proposed rates. As you can see, a very significant increase projected for low density residential in particular. So currently charging just under 7,000 and proposed to go up to 18,000. Keeping in mind that change in definition that I highlighted on the last slide does provide for an additional unit within that category without paying additional DCC. So right now, included in that $7,000 charge is the ability to develop a secondary suite without incurring DCC. Under the proposed changes, it would be a significantly increased rate, but they would also have the ability to add a 3rd unit, a carriage house, on that same lot without incurring additional rates. And then you can see the increases, the increase for medium density. So currently we don't differentiate between medium and high, whereas moving forward we do propose that we do differentiate between those two. And as you can see, consistent with the changes or the approach taken by Courtney and Comox, we propose to charge a rate per meter squared for the higher density to incentivize the type of development that I think we want to see as a community. And then the rest of the rates, commercial, institutional, industrial, also see some fairly significant increases, and they're charged on the per square meter. So what we're recommending with the report is that the DCC bylaw be forwarded for first, second, and third reading, which will allow us to continue with the next steps in the process. We would, as I mentioned earlier, bring forward the capital improvement cost charge bylaw to the next meeting. And then if supported today, then we would inform the development community of the rate increases planned, including posting and building links, direct notification to the developers via email, working in conjunction with Courtney and Comox to develop that list. And then a coordinated meeting currently anticipated for July, where we would meet, the 3 local governments would meet with developers to walk them through the proposed changes and answer any of the questions they have. And then once that's complete, any feedback received would be summarized, the process would be summarized, and the package forwarded to the inspector of municipalities for their review and approval prior to bringing back the 4th reading, or the bylaw for 4th reading in late summer, early fall. The other piece that the staff report addresses is the outstanding request for staff to consider and report back on waiving or reducing development cost charges for affordable housing. So I think it was May of last year that that request was made from the, but that direction was provided from the commission. In the report, we do summarize some analysis to identify the amount of affordable housing that this type of allowance could have applied to over the last 5 years, and estimated the potential or the revenue that came in that could otherwise have been lost if the exemption had been granted. And that's just under about $800,000 for the 5 developments that we've identified. So that was information that was asked for by the commission at the time, just to help inform the decision. But we are making the recommendation that we're kind of that waiving DCCs for affordable housing should likely be considered at the regional level. So we're proposing to, I guess, push pause on this discussion at the commission while that conversation happens at the board, and then take the next steps at that point. So that's all that I have, but I'm happy to support the discussion.
Thanks very much, Chris. And it's open to commission members for questions or comments. And we'll start with Director McCollum. Oops.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I have a couple of questions, but I'll just start with my first one and get back in the queue. The recommendation on the industrial rate per square meter is quite a bit less for industrial versus institutional and commercial. The previous rates, they seem a little bit closer. So just wanted to understand why we're recommending. I realize we don't have a ton of industrial use, but just wanting to understand what the rationale is on that rate.
So the rates are for all of these categories are based on equivalent population. So the so for low density, the estimated per capita kind of yeah. Sorry, I'm just highlighting that in all of the categories, equivalent population is behind the numbers, and so the difference that you're highlighting, the larger proportional increase in commercial versus industrial, is a reflection of the change to the equivalent population that is used between those 2 categories. And so that was developed in consultation with Courtney and Comox.
I'm going to end up putting everybody on here.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair, and thanks, Chris. One of the things I was struck by when I was reading the report is this is the first up-to-date since 2019. And my understanding is that often it's a shorter cycle for updating DCC, so as not to produce fairly stark steps up as we seem to be seeing here. Was there a particular reason for that time lag, and do we that length of time, and do we plan to do it more regularly going forward?
Yes, absolutely. And I was remiss in not highlighting that in my presentation. There's been a significant gap since the last update, and that is on top of the inflationary increases that we've seen over that time period. I guess that's just another reason why these updates should happen on a much more frequent basis. So yeah, moving forward, our intention is to undertake a minor amendment anytime we have an updated cost estimate for a project, and then a major update no longer than 5-year intervals. So yeah, without doubt. And so one of the reasons why the significant gap, I would point to the twofold: the infrastructure planning processes that we've had underway, the LWMP and the embedded site master planning process have been key outputs needed to update the project list. The cost of the projects is the guts of the analysis, and we needed to have that planning process advanced to the point where we could get costs. So that's just now happened over the last weeks. So that's one piece, and then the other one is the ongoing LWMP process, and the linkage there. So that's why it's taken us so long to update these.
Short follow-up, thank you. I know that some communities, you're talking about a sort of a timeline of 5 years. I would hope we might go with something less than 5 years, like say 3. And I know some other communities have triggers based upon infrastructure costs, like when they start seeing sudden escalations, as we've seen, that automatically triggers a reassessment of DCCs. Is that something we would consider, so as not to find ourselves in a position like this where the increase is stark because of the time?
Yeah, we would definitely, we'll definitely give that some thought and take a look at some of those other jurisdictions that you've mentioned that have woven in that construction cost escalation trigger. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, Director McCollum, my apologies. I meant to give you the follow-up, but my fingers and my brain were not in sync. You have as much time as you want now.
Okay, thanks. Not a problem. Yeah, so my follow-up just on your explanation on how population impacts or population density impacts the rates. How does that equate to something that's a non-residential use? That was the piece I wasn't understanding from your explanation.
I'll ask Zoe to answer that. She's much closer to.
Yes, thanks through the chair. So the way it's kind of calculated is kind of a fundamental formula. So there's, the city, the town, everyone that's part of the sewer service estimates what they anticipate for that institutional or that industrial kind of floor area. And then there's kind of this industry standard on what an equivalent population density is for those types of uses. So there's an assumed higher people per square meter for institutional versus industrial. The definition in the bylaw is kind of not quite as, storage units, for example, as industrial versus institutional. We can think of a school or something like that. So that's kind of where, we take the square floor area times that number gets us this equivalent. And that's kind of why you're seeing that difference in cost.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. Thanks for clarifying. And then my next question is unrelated, although to the report, yes. There is a list of 6 scenarios in which DCCs are not currently payable. And then it goes on to explain how we're creating better alignment between the 2 municipalities. But what I wasn't clear about is whether or not some of these are staying as is. The number 2, the permit is for construction of a building that will contain fewer than 2 self-contained dwelling units. I won't finish reading that. That one, I wasn't clear what we're talking about there and if that would continue. And then the other one that I'm actually more interested in is number 4. The unit is no larger than 29 square meters, which is, I think, what we call micro units. And I know that a lot of municipalities are currently waiving those. And from the slide up here, it would seem to me that that would be a high density residential unit, but could you clarify if we would still be waiving those fees?
Yeah, so there was a fair bit of discussion between municipal staff about this question, and that direction was confirmed to leave that that exemption in place. So you're right, it would otherwise fit into high density. However, I guess the intention is to waive the fees for that very high density, those very high density types of units, which I guess are typically implemented as part of affordable housing initiatives.
Yeah, yeah, personally, I don't agree. I don't think we should be waiving DCCs on those micro units because it's not clear to me whether or not those savings are actually passed on. It can be an opportunity for higher rate of return. And they do still have an impact on infrastructure and population. So, I mean, if we're charging per square meter, I did the math, it's under $3,000 a unit. So I don't see why we would waive those, especially if we're considering waiving DCCs for affordable units from nonprofit. I'd much rather see us put the waiver there than on private development that may or may not result in more affordability. So if that's a decision point, that's before us, I would rather see that lumped in with the table and not excluded. And could you explain to me what the number 2 thing is that the permit is for construction of a building that will contain 2 or then few self-contained dwelling units and be for residential use? What would be the scenario where we have 2 self-contained units that we're waiving DCCs for? Is that the like secondary suite exemption? And I'm just not totally understanding that.
Yeah, so that is in relation to the secondary suite. And further to the 29 square meters, our approach has been to work closely with Courtney and Comox on definitions to synchronize those. And I understand that the town has recently reviewed their DCC bylaw this week, I believe, and that the city will be bringing forward theirs at the end of the month. So I guess in the interest of keeping the definitions similar, we could look at comparing notes after Courtney has brought forward theirs as well, and look at if there's consensus on a change. That's our current approach. If the commission feels that that we could strike a different definition here, we definitely take that direction as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with the structure that's been presented today, and we have not had that conversation at the City of Courtney in my time on council. But I mean, I've formulated this opinion over my time on council that I don't see the rationale for waiving them entirely. So if that is something that we can give some time for some discussion to happen at the council tables, if the intention is to try and reach consensus, I think there's value in doing that. But I mean, that's just my opinion. That's not a discussion that I've had with other municipal councillors. Thanks.
Just if I can ask, building on that line of questioning, is there alignment between the definition for high density residential and the exemption of the 29 square meter units? For some reason, I'm going back to when the 29 square meters was first introduced, and I thought I had understood it to be not so much the micro units or the large scale developments, the high density residential that would attract that exemption. It was more a case of whether it be smaller secondary units on a property or within a building, rather than the high density residential. So is there alignment between the high density residential definition and the exemption for the 29 square meters, or have we put those kind of into conflict with each other, where we would intend to attractive DCCs for the high density residential, whether it's small units or larger units in that high density residential.
No, I don't think there's a conflict with the definition. My understanding is that the exemption is not restricted to like a residential home type of setting, that it does apply to the very high density buildings. And that's, yeah, but otherwise, you know, these are, we're very much looking to Courtney and Comox to set the kind of the thresholds for these ones.
Okay. And so if the commission supports the recommendations more or less, then we would continue to engage with Courtney and Comox staff to understand what the feedback is through those council deliberations. But we do still need to be in front of the board with bylaws for readings. So either coming back to Sewage Commission or being able to go straight to board, I guess, depending on that how that discussion unfolds.
Maybe you could comment on the timing that we're anticipating here, Chris, and whether there's room for some further dialogue in relation to the point that Director McCollum has raised.
Certainly, we could take this away and have dialogue with municipal staff like right away and follow up outside of the meeting structure. I think right now the board, so the first, second, third reading would occur on the Tuesday, the 23rd, 24th. Yeah. And I believe the city council meeting would be the following day, so not occurring prior to that opportunity. So that doesn't provide an opportunity to have that discussion at the council prior to. And we just worked today to set a tentative date for that engagement in mid-July. So that's the current time frame.
All right, well, subject to a request to amend what we have on the floor, you've outlined the situation that we're dealing with here. There's room for further questions or comments from commission members. We have a staff consultation taking place at the moment.
Apologies for, so Zoe's just highlighted a very relevant section of the Local Government Act, which I should have come to mind as earlier in this discussion. So it speaks specifically to the 29 square meters, to DCCs not being payable to units that are smaller than that. So apologies for not flagging that before we wasted the last 5 minutes.
All right, you pulled a trump card out of your pocket there.
Thank you, Zoe.
I do have a further question. I wonder if you can comment on the implications with these significant increases in DCC rates, given the current dialogue that's going on at a national and provincial level regarding development cost charges and as impediments to housing development, and what the implications are as we move forward with this, such an increase.
You know, I guess, you know, we're seeing locally here, you know, why that's become a hot topic nationally as well. We understand that many communities are wrestling with these same scale of increases to their development cost charges, which again is why it's becoming such a high level discussion. I'm curious to understand what steps the federal government is intending to, or how they're intending to follow through on some of their messaging recently about looking to cut the development charges in half. I mean, that would be obviously, you know, looking at it across the country, that would be a very large dollar value in terms of grant funding to help bring those costs down so significantly. Yeah, but I guess to reiterate, you know, without grant funding or some form of funding to help reduce those costs, there really is only two options, and you know, it's one to proceed as recommended, or another is to adjust the municipal assist factor and increase the percentage of the projects that are covered by existing users.
Okay, thanks for that. Further, Director Grant?
I was just wondering, I have a couple of questions. Number one is Courtney about to look at their DCCs? I'm not 100% sure of that. Yeah. So we just did ours and they're jumping significantly. And so it all falls into this. The other thing is, when in Ottawa, I spoke with a couple of the lawyers after Prime Minister Carney decided that he was going to cut the DCCs in half. And apparently how they have it worked out is that the feds will pay a quarter and the provinces will pay a quarter. Unfortunately, he hasn't talked to the provinces about that yet. So I think we're years away from getting to where that might be something. So I think it's interesting to keep that in mind and to remember that you're adding, all of these get added together at the end. And I think in Comox, and we've been messing with ours a little bit, but I think we're looking at like $50,000 or $60,000 per unit, which, I mean, if you're trying to build more affordable units, that just kills it. So I don't know how that's all going to work, but I think it's an interesting time to be doing it, but it would be really great for us to wait and find out where Courtney's going to go, so we have some semblance of where we should be with it.
Yeah, I'll agree with you that the timing's unfortunate, but as it has been outlined, we have two options and neither of them are particularly palatable under the circumstances. All right, further comments or questions? Have we discussed the affordable housing aspect of this to the extent that commission members are satisfied? Anything further to add on that, Chris?
No, nothing further.
Okay. All right, so while we are on receipt, is anyone opposed to receipt? That is carried. We have a recommendation with three parts in number one, that the amendment to bylaw 572 be considered by the board for first, second, and third reading. And further, that an amendment be drafted for review at a subsequent Sewage Commission meeting, pending decision by the Sewage Commission in regards to maintaining capital improvement cost charge, etc. And finally, that staff be directed to inform the development community regarding the proposed update. Moved by McCollum, seconded by Grant. Further discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Oh, Director Grant, sorry, we'll hold off on the vote.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I don't think it'll change the vote. I'm just wondering, when we inform the contractors of the development cost charges, will that be just the regional districts DCCs, or will that be of all of them? Because yours doesn't seem really onerous on its own, but when you add them all up, it's huge.
So, yeah, so we've opted to collaborate on the engagement. So that event that I mentioned in July would be Courtney, Comox, and the CVRD meeting together, and so yeah, being very clear about what the cumulative total for these DCCs and ACCs are for development in each of those communities.
Yes, perhaps safety in numbers, or maybe share the pain is more appropriate. All right, thanks for that, Chris. All right, back to the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And we have a second recommendation that establishing what constitutes eligible development as it pertains to the affordable housing categories in Section 563 of the Local Government Act be referred to the board for consideration. And further, that a decision regarding eligible development categories be made following receipt of feedback from the board.
Whoa.
Moved by Grant, seconded by Cole Hamilton. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you for that, Chris and Zoe. And we'll move on to item number 4, the sewer conveyance project construction progress dashboard. And I think Charlie will be coming up on this, Mr. Wood.
Yeah, that's right. Senior Manager of Capital Projects, Charlie Gore, will be introducing this dashboard, a regular feature of your Sewage Commission meetings. And Charlie,
And we have receipt moved by Grant and seconded by Cole Hamilton. Go ahead, Charlie, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, CAO. Just going to share a short presentation with some photos. The dashboard that was included in the agenda is mainly my presentation today. The news is good news. Project is continuing on. We feel like it's going really well out there. We're managing some issues that have come up, which I'll comment on today, but the overarching kind of message is that things are going well. If I can figure out how to change this slide. Okay, so those that transverse through the work sites will see that we are now up on Comox Hill, and that work started on Sunday night, and we'll be proceeding for the next couple of weeks as we work our way up the hill as quick as we can. That is happening as night work. So along with that night work are some complications that come with night work, noise, and things, and we're getting that done as quickly as we can. Similarly, out on Lazo Road, for those that live out that way, you'll see that the pipe is extremely deep out in the sand hill out there right now, and so it's a huge excavation to get the pipe through that last piece of the hill to tie in down to where we've built to the eastern end of the town of Comox on Torrance Road. And in Courtney Pump Station, we have poured our first major concrete pour at the bottom of the wet well. So I know that many can't really see when you're driving past what's happening in the hole, but a lot is happening in the hole. So this was a photo taken last week of them tying rebar. And on Friday, we did our first major structural concrete pour, which is the base of our wet well. And then this photo on my right here was a photo I took about an hour ago out on Comox Road, and currently they are drilling into our live pipe for our above ground bypass through IR1. So this is a huge milestone for us as we look to get the final piece of our force main installed through IR1, which is the most complicated piece because we need to bypass the original pipe, turn it off, drain it, and replace it in situ to minimize our impacts on cultural heritage. So that work is going really well. And the bypass pipe is ready to be connected later this week. So you can see there's a lot more green than orange. We are about 80% complete on force main, and we'll be starting to close up the final sections over the next couple of months. We're all scheduled to have the force main complete by the end of August. And then the remaining work is the pump stations as well as the surface works within the town of Comox. A more detailed breakdown of the schedule is here and is also in the dashboard showing that some of the pump station works, we've still got a long way to go there, but the force main work is all coming to a close shortly. And this is one of the issues that I wanted to raise with the commission. As per our approved traffic management plan, we've been monitoring the traffic along Back Road, and we have seen an unmanageable volume of folks shortcutting through Strathcona Crescent. This was a problem that we envisaged long ago when we came up with the plan. And although we have a lot of signage for those that are already not following our detour route, to try and get them to turn up McDonald and not cut through these side streets now that we have the intersection of Glacier View Drive and Comox Avenue closed. We were seeing a fourfold increase in traffic along these little side streets compared to pre-project volumes. And those volumes are too high for a local road. And so we have proceeded in conjunction with collaborating with Comox First Nation and through our advisory with our municipal partners. We have closed these intersections at Strathcona Crescent and Corker Avenue. And this turns the whole eastern end of Back Road into a dead end. And so that comes with it major advantages and disadvantages for those that live in that corridor. There is no longer any shortcutting through there because it's all closed off. But it does make the routing for people heading to work, for our SD71 buses. It's very unfortunate that we had to do this 3 weeks before school finishing, as well as transit. So we didn't make this decision lightly, but we saw it as necessary to keep the people on these side streets safe. And so we've had really good support from our municipal and First Nation partners as we've proceeded to work through this issue. But this was just closed on Monday morning, and we are receiving a lot of feedback. Some people are very thankful, and some people are very upset. And so, like all these issues, there's pros and cons, and we had to make this decision for safety reasons.
And Charlie, can you comment on the time frame that the closure is for?
Yeah, so the roundabout work is going to be going on for a while. So until we have Glacier View roundabout open, these roads will need to remain closed. We were unable to get even Google Maps to not route people through these streets. And so, you know, you think about the summer traffic coming in, those people from outside our community, they would all be getting routed through these side streets, and they're just not designed for that. So they will remain closed until we have another major traffic change. But with the Glacier View roundabout construction going into September, they will remain in place until then.
And how does that impact, you said the force main will be completed by the end of August, I believe. How does that impact traffic on the Dyke Road in terms of one lane or two?
The Glacier View Drive roundabout is the deciding factor there. We still we have to have that roundabout finished before eastbound traffic can flow up Comox Road onto Comox Ave. It's unmanageable to come through that intersection while it's under construction. So that's our real critical factor, and we're working with the contractor and Town of Comox on that process right now. And we'll be coming back to the commission at a later date to really forecast those dates and talk about how we will get those remaining roundabouts done, and with the traffic management planning. If you remember, probably not, but going back to our original approved traffic management plan, we really focused on 2025, and the overarching plan was January to fall 2025. We were implementing the unidirectional traffic to get all the works done, and then we were not putting a lot of effort into the 2026 plan or the Rodelo roundabout plan, because we needed to see how the unidirectional traffic worked. And so we're in that process now with our traffic engineers and our municipal partners, understanding we have a really good understanding of how the traffic works. We're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel for the force main. And now it's a matter of fine tuning the plan for getting our community moving again whilst finishing those roundabouts on Comox Ave. That's it for me. Very happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. And I just want to acknowledge that the challenges are quite onerous. I know that from taking part in a meeting with James and Ingrid this morning regarding back road traffic issues, that you're receiving a ton of calls from people who are impacted by the most recent decisions on the roads. And I just want to offer you support from the commission here for the work that you're doing. And I know that you're bringing the brunt of a lot of distressed people out there in our traveling public. So over to Councillor or Director Swift.
Thank you. I'm just curious about the Emerald Shores group of residents. They currently now have to travel in the other direction. Will that continue until the roundabout is completed?
No. So as promised, we worked in the contract through the Glacier View roundabout that once the force main is finished and connected at the top of the hill, that the contractor will sequence that work to allow a small eastbound lane through that intersection to allow the folks that live on Comox Hill, at the top of the hill there, and Emerald Shores. There's also a driveway kind of 2/3 of the way up the hill that's also within the town of Comox, for them to be able to sneak back into the town of Comox. But it's a very narrow lane, and it's not wide enough to take the entire corridor's traffic. So they're very, very well informed through Ingrid. Ingrid has contact directly with the Emerald Shores strata about exactly our plan there. But we are following our commitment to make sure that they're not going the long way around for anything longer than needed just to get the force main in.
Any further questions or comments? All right, thanks very much, Charlie, to you and your staff. Appreciate that, as you say, the light at the end of the tunnel is there, and it's not an oncoming train, much as it might have been. So thanks very much. We are on receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? That is carried. We do have a few minutes, and I want to just indulge the commission. I meant to ask a question related to our resolution status report. If you'll indulge me, Chris, I believe we may have a glimmer of hope regarding the issue of the Sandy dump. If you could comment on that, please.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. So as the commission knows, we completed a public process to call for expressions of interest for property owners that might be interested in partnering with us on siting a facility. So we did have a single opportunity come out of that process. So we're now exploring. McElhaney is doing some additional assessment of the site, and we've engaged a professional to help us navigate the negotiation with them. So we're hopeful that not too long from now, we could come back with some more details specifically about what that opportunity is. Not at a liberty to share publicly the details of location at this point.
Thanks very much, and thanks for your indulgence, Commission. I thought people might be grateful to know that. That long journey is maybe reaching a good conclusion. All right, we've reached the end of our agenda, and with no further business, I'll take a motion for termination. Grant, seconded McCollum, all in favor. Thanks very much to everyone. The meeting is adjourned.